We are what? We are who? We are what? Vibrant. We are who? 50 plus. Hi, welcome to Gray Lives on the Rise. I am your host, Professor Jamila Franklin, and we are coming to you from Oyende Enterprises, being sponsored by Jamila Sense, which is our product line of aromatherapy products that helps heal the mind, body, and soul. And we are bringing to you Alamaj's rebirthing program, as well as Jamila Sense and a host of wonderful programs that will help heal your body, heal your soul, and heal your mind. 50 plus people, we are here to stay. Gray Lives on the Rise. We are what? We are who? We are vibrant, and we are here to stay. Join us for our wonderful episodes. Thank you, and continue to look for our episodes weekly, being brought to you again from Oyende Enterprises and Jamila Sense. See you soon. Greetings, everyone. Welcome again to Gray Lives on the Rise. I am your host, Professor Jamila Franklin, and welcome back. You're in for a wonderful, wonderful treat and surprise tonight. The beautiful Shannon Cohall is going to be our guest, and she's going to talk about a topic that is so important for us, for the people who are 50 plus. We need to be on this, what she's talking about. And she's a beautiful alum of my alma mater, Cornell University. So you know she has a lot to offer, okay? I'm just saying, right? Anyway, the whole thing about this is that I'll give you a little background information about Gray Lives on the Rise. It happened about 2 years ago. And I was walking, and I'm a walking enthusiast. I love exercising. And so all of a sudden, I got this download in my crown that said, look, there is nothing that speaks to your demographic. I was like, what? There's nothing out there that speaks to you except Medicare and AARP. And I said, wow, that's true. And Medicare doesn't really draw me in. It doesn't resonate that well with me. I think it's a great organization, but I'm vegan and I'm healthy. So it doesn't mean that all vegans are healthy. No, not at all. It just means that I am healthy. And so it doesn't appeal to me. And then the other organization is AARP. And when you hear AARP, you think of people who are sedentary, rocking wheelchairs, ready for the home, whatever that is, right? And so none of my friends know I fit into that category. So I said, even though AARP has really grown and become more progressive, that's the stigma. So I thought about it, and then more information came to me on this walk. It was like, okay, you need to come up with a name for this organization because it's a movement. It's not just a one-time thing. You need to come up with a name for it. You need to come up with adjectives that correctly and accurately describe who you guys are. You need to come up with a store, and you need to come up with a podcast. So the name that came to me first was Gray Lives Matter. And I said, no, that's too cliche-ish. It's overused. I'm not interested in that. And then Gray Lives on the Rise came up, and I liked it. Why? Because lives rhymes with rise. You don't have to have gray hair. You don't have to have hair, period. It's a consciousness. Then the second thing that came to me was, we need to relanguage how we view ourselves. We're not elderly. We're not old. We're not even, I don't call myself even a senior. So I said,
oh, that's right.
We need to think about something that's really progressive. So we came up with the different terms in terms of mature, seasoned, and golden. And then the next thing was the store. This energy said, look, you need to have a brand so people can relate to it. And I said, oh, yeah. So that's how we came up with the shirt and the Lights on the Rise. Right? And we have everything you can imagine. We have totes, we have cosmetics bags, we have floor mats, we have mugs, we have hoodies. We are really on the rise. So the last thing was the podcast. And am I talking with people around the world because we are a global podcast that caters to people who are 50 plus. We,
Mm-hmm.
am I talking with them? They said the same thing. You could be 49 and you're relevant. The next day you turn 50, people tend to dismiss you. They tend to
Mm.
gaslight you. They tend not to want to hire you. And it's ironic because those same people have bosses who own the companies that are over 50. So I said, go figure. That makes no sense. And so I thought about it. I said, you know what? I started putting it out there. So we've had guests from Serbia and Eastern Europe, from South Africa, Australia, Canada, the UK, the Netherlands, New Zealand, the Philippines, Costa Rica,
Wow.
and of course, America. So it's growing, right? It's growing and it's multi-racial,
Hmm.
and both men and women are part of it. And we're on the rise, so we can then support each other with businesses and services that cater to us because we don't think about things the way we did when we were 20, 30, and 40 years old. So, things have changed. So that's the background for
I love
Great Lives on the Rise. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about, because I have to pay for this. It's my show. So my company pays for it, Oyende Enterprises, and the one that pays for it is
it.
Jamila Sense. And it
Yes.
is a wonderful, wonderful holistic aromatherapy company. I'm a
Ooh.
certified aromatherapist, a certified Reiki master, a college professor of psychology, an award-winning author. I,
You do it all. Oh my
I,
goodness.
I
Oh
do
my
about
goodness.
10 different things. My mom used to say, get multiple careers so you would never be broke.
That's
And
true.
listen to her. Okay.
That's true.
So, but this product here, you see, is transparent. You put three
Ooh.
drops in your hand, and then you rub your hands together. And oh my goodness, you breathe
Oh
it
my
in. It
goodness.
gets rid of stress, anxiety, depression, hyperactivity within children,
Okay.
sinus congestion, sinus headaches, migraine headaches, and flies and mosquitoes won't come near you during the summer. This is my
Well,
#1 seller, and it's doing well. So Great
good.
Lives on the Rise is my latest baby. Go to our website, oyendeenterprises.com, and it's spelled OYINDE
Okay.
Enterprises, ENTERPRISES.com. Click on it, go all the way to until you see Great Lives on the Rise. Click on that, and that's our latest baby, and she is doing well.
Nice.
Okay, she's doing very well. So thank you for joining. So I've done the preliminary, so now we're going to get to our wonderful, beautiful guest and give you some background information. Smooth this over here about Shannon. I'm so excited. I was so excited today
I do.
to have the show. I said, I'm going to have Shannon on my show. Yay! Shannon K. Cohall, Esquire. Okay, she's a lawyer. She's
Okay.
amazing. Shannon K. Cohall is an attorney, entrepreneur, and community leader working at the intersection of healthcare, technology, and the law. She is amazing. She is the founder and principal of the Cohall Firm, where she advises entrepreneurs, healthcare professionals, and startups on business formation, estate planning, intellectual property, and health law compliance. Known for her forward thinking and equity centered approach, Shannon helps clients protect their legacies, brands, and businesses while building sustainable, compliant ventures. And in addition to her legal practice, Shannon serves as president and CEO of the Cornell Black Alumni Association, which is called SEBA, which I'm a member of,
Yes.
leading a national network of more than 15,000 Black alumni through advocacy, community building, professional development, and scholarship initiatives. Her leadership focuses on strengthening institutional independence, She's done an excellent job with that. Expanding alumni engagement, excellent job. And investing in future generations, excellent job. Shannon earned her Bachelor of Science from Cornell University, which is our alma mater, a Master of Public Health from Washington University in St. Louis, and a Juris Doctor from Rutgers Law School. She recently completed a Master of Laws in Law Technology and Entrepreneurship from Cornell Law School. She is also the co-founder of Baked by GT, an online bakery honoring her Caribbean roots through Jamaican Black cake. Shannon K. Cohall is an attorney and entrepreneur at the intersection of healthcare. And she's doing so many wonderful things. Beyond her legal and leadership roles, she's been doing all these other volunteer organization kinds of things, which really requires a lot of time. I don't know how she does all of these things.
I don't know either.
I just don't know. She's amazing. She's
Thank
amazing.
you.
And from the first time that I physically saw her, I was impressed, and I was following her in terms of the wonderful things that she's been doing. So Shannon, welcome. Thank you so much. And we're going to talk today not about Cornell, which is our alma mater. We're going to talk about estates, wills, and building your legacy, because Shannon is my future estate attorney. Okay, we've already talked about it. So I just have to sign on a dotted line, but she's going to handle all of my business affairs. People who know me, they know that I'm not a person who's easily impressed by things. I'm just not. So when I decide upon something, particularly dealing with my businesses, it has to be something that makes sense to me, something that's going to be viable, and something that I know is going to withstand the test of time. So
Amen.
Shannon is the person. We're going to jump in there to talk about estate planning, because most of you know, you're in your 50s. Shannon's not 50. Okay. She looks really good. She's not 50, but see, I own the podcast, so I can bring people in at any age, right? She's the youngest that I've brought in. But I wanted her to talk to us because it's important and critical for us to do estate planning and have our wills together, understand what a trust is, because some of us don't understand. And I'm going to give you an example. Shannon and I talked about it briefly. Prince and Aretha Franklin died intestate. They didn't have a will, much less a trust. So they have their heirs bickering over what to do with that. And you know what happens? Then the state gets involved, and you don't want that to happen. Things go into probate court. You spend all your money fighting each other. Whereas if the business had been handled prior to the transition of your loved one, you wouldn't have to go through all that, because everything would be laid out. My mom, rest her soul, laid out everything. The small amount of money that she had was very clear. She told me exactly where she wanted her money to go, how she wanted it set up, her life insurance plan. I didn't have to struggle with it. And I only have one brother. I have some half brothers and sisters that I'm not in touch with, but one biological brother. So she told me exactly what to do. So there was no bickering.
Yeah.
Please get your house in order. And a lot of my friends are doing that. They're writing out their medical advanced medical directives, which you have to do, because you never know if something can happen and you can become mentally incompetent. You just never know, with a stroke or whatever. And then that's the time when people should know that you have your plan laid out, because then at that point, when you're mentally incompetent, you can't make decisions.
Correct.
And what happens is the hospital then steps in. I know of a case now where a person hasn't done that. And so the hospital steps in, or people that you don't desire to be in charge of your estate step in and handle your business. Because I know people who are still married to people that they haven't been with for 10
we're gonna talk about it.
years. Yeah,
Yeah.
this is crazy. I want someone who's done that. And I have stopped talking to people because I'm telling them all that touchy-feely stuff has no place when you're dealing with business,
Yeah.
especially for
Absolutely.
women. Okay.
Absolutely.
Get it together. So Shannon, I turn it over to you. Let's talk about wills so people can understand the difference between a will and a trust, um, and a revocable trust versus an irrevocable trust, estate planning, all of that.
Absolutely. Well, Professor Jamila, thank you first so much for having me on your podcast. I'm honored to be here and honored to be your youngest guest on the podcast. This is exciting. But I do want to say thank you so much for having me. And it's an honor to be here speaking about a topic that is near and dear to my own heart for many reasons. And I'll give you gave thank you for my bio, and that really informs who I am. My background is important. And there's a part in my bio specifically about my bakery, my online bakery with my grandmother, which I never take that out of my bio because it's probably, of all the degrees, all the things I've done, running a bakery with my grandma is probably the most important part of my life. And the
Mhm.
most, and I think the thing I'm most proud of in my own career, because it's a testament to a tradition in our family as Black women and from the Caribbean and passing on this legacy. And that's what I do ultimately, whether it's baking a cake that I learned from my grandmother, who she learned it from her mother, or it's writing an estate plan, because both of those things we're passing something down to folks. And Black folk in particular, no matter what color you are, wherever you're from, we have important things that we want to continue to share and cherish and pass it on. And so that's why I got into the work that I did. And funny enough, I practiced healthcare law originally, but when I started my law firm, my dad, who is a pastor of a church in Brooklyn, he said, Shannon, I do a lot of funerals and it is chaos for families when
Yeah.
the person that passed did not create a will, did not create a plan or to have a trust, and it tears families apart. He said,
Yeah.
he said, you already, this is a form of ministry. So I view it as a ministry, as a part of my ministry to my community, because ultimately what I'm trying to do in terms of estate planning is what you're trying to do is you're trying to protect your legacy. You're trying to protect your assets, and you're actually protecting your life during your life. A lot of folks say, "Oh, I don't want to deal," especially in our community. I don't want to deal with it. It's death. I don't want to talk about that. And I get that, which is also why I have to take care when I'm having these conversations. I know that this is a very sensitive topic because I'm usually talking to someone about what happens when they're gone.
Yeah.
And so I use my father and my mother, their pastoral energy in how I have these conversations because it is sensitive, but it's also important to have a plan, because if you don't have a plan, like you said earlier, the law decides for you, the state decides. And if you want to have a say in what happens to the assets and things that you've worked so hard for, you got to write it down. We got to put on our big boy and big girl shoes, have that conversation, talk about what works for your specific situation. Because another thing that's important when it comes to estate planning is that what works for you doesn't work for your best friend and won't work for the other person. Everybody's situation is different. So what
Very
we
true.
do as estate planning attorneys is make sure that we get an insight. I told my clients, I'm getting all up in your business. I got to know everything because
Yeah.
that will help us create a plan that works best for you.
Hmm.
So, to kind of take us from a top heavy from the top, I'll
Yeah.
start off with what happens when you don't have a plan. When someone dies, like you mentioned, Prince or Aretha Franklin, or another one of my favorites, Bob Marley, and his is interesting because his was an estate in another country. And so, what happens when someone dies intestate, essentially, that means they die without a will or without a trust or any sort of plan. The law does have a set of rules and orders, an order that determines how your assets are divided up. So if you are married, typically in a lot of states, the first 50,000 will go to your spouse, and then the rest of it is split between your spouse and your children. If you're not married, it'll go to your children, split evenly. That's what we call per stirpes, and it's going to all of your kids. If you are don't have kids, it'll revert to your parents. If your parents are gone, then it'll go to your siblings. If you don't have any siblings, then it goes to your aunts and uncles, and so then to your cousins, and then next of kin. So it does make logical sense the way the law has created a plan for folks. But the idea is that it's your last will and testament. You have control over what happens. Because what if you have, you mentioned some of us have siblings that we don't talk to, or
Yeah,
children that we may not, necessarily have a relationship with.
yeah,
Or we have friends that we want to leave something to. Some of our friends become family, but by law, a friend is not a part of the family. So you may want to leave something to your best friend. And if you didn't write that down, they ain't getting it.
mhm,
But you can give it to them. And so that is what we try to do when we're creating a plan. So that's a little bit about what happens when you don't have a will or a trust. The other thing that happens is you go through this process called probate. Now, depending on what state you're in, probate court or surrogates court takes a long time. I'm from New
mhm.
York City, New York City. It can be years that families are in court fighting, bickering, arguing who's getting what. Then you might have a child that comes out of nowhere that y'all didn't know about that is technically an heir. And so it can get messy. So,
Mhm.
in order to avoid that, and that also, you have to go through probate when you have a will as well. To start to avoid that and really protect our assets, we want to make a plan. So you have a couple choices when you are creating an estate plan, right? First,
Mhm.
the first line of defense is a will. It is the bare minimum that everyone needs to have. In fact, I think, when someone turns 18, honestly, they need to start thinking about everything in their life, start planning. That's young, right? You're like, oh, I'm not, but when you go away to college, or if you're going to college or you move away, chances are you things are changing. You're an adult, and so you want to start creating this. So I actually do a lot of estate planning with my own generation, millennials, Gen Z, because I have folks who are younger. The pandemic taught us that life is not promised.
Yeah,
You're responsible for what happens to you. And so, it's never too early to start.
yeah.
So first line of defense, making a will. So a will is a document that essentially says what happens to your assets when you die. It
Mhm.
essentially says, okay, upon my death, these are my beneficiaries, or these are my heir, and these are the folks that I want to give something to. So you can make it explicit. I think in the movies or in old TV shows, you always see the famous reading of the will where, everyone comes and sits around and you learn about what grandpa left you. It's not as dramatic as that now. You kind of just get a letter telling you what you're going to inherit. But that will is still important because it's your directive. This is
Mhm.
especially important for people who are either not married or don't have children. Because
Mhm.
when you are a single person, and I take this I take this one really seriously, because I remember I had an aunt who passed and she had a significant estate. And when you have a significant estate, even if you just have anything, and you don't have direct heirs, as in children or a spouse, it can get complicated. So you want to make it as easy for those who are left behind to make a plan so that they know what to do. So your will decides that. Your will also can include your funeral arrangements. You can say, where you have your burial plot, what's going to happen, what church or what do you want to happen at a funeral. It can include things, clauses. You can say, this person can inherit if they do such and such. Like, okay, this child inherits upon turning 25. Or we have like a spendthrift clause that goes in it, which says that, hey, we're going to put these in parameters. You get $5,000 every year. We're not just going to give you a lump sum of money when you're, as an 18-year-old. So
Mhm.
all you can craft a will however you want. So that's the benefit of a will. It doesn't become active until you die. So that is important. You can change it up as many times. You can rip it up. You can rewrite it. You can amend it. That's all what you and your estate planning attorney will do.
Mhm.
The moment you pass is when it becomes active, essentially. The next line of defense after the will, and the only thing about a will, I said the downside is that, well, the upside is that it's cheaper to do. So it's something that most folks should just do. You can write it down yourself. I recommend working with an estate planning attorney to make sure that it's done properly and witnessed properly. The downside is that it has to also go through probate court. So again, that takes a long time and it's expensive. So you may not pay at the beginning when it comes to drafting the will, But when it comes to probating a will, it can be costly. And sometimes folks end up spending down the very assets that they're trying to acquire in that
Wow.
legal process.
So one quick, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So do all wills, even if they're not contested, have to go to probate?
Every will has to go through probate, even if it's
Even
uncontested.
uncontested. Oh, wow.
Uncontested just means that, that everyone, and it's short for that term, contested or uncontested.
Mhm.
Uncontested means that there's no issues, everyone agrees, you know, however, it still has to go through probate and it becomes a public record. That is one of the things about probate that a lot of folks forget about, which is why we know about some people's estates, because a will becomes a public record through this probate process. So really anybody can go to like the New York, records or any state records and find people's wills. Now, that now puts your business on Front Street, right? So if privacy is important to you, that's a downside. The other thing is you may have folks now who are, I call them kind of, vultures at that point when a family's at their most vulnerable point, they're in a grieving process. Here come creditors. Here come, the folks asking, are you going to sell the house? Are you going to talking to, the grandkids? And so that's also what happens too, because folks can see what assets you have and now
Oh,
everybody's coming to make a claim. And by law, that's why it has to become a public record too, because anybody that is a potential heir has the ability to come and make a claim if they do have that right.
mm.
So,
I think this is really important because I know as knowledgeable as I credit myself to be, I didn't know that all wills, even if they're uncontested, go through probate court. I had no idea. I know
yeah.
people who are setting up wills and stuff, and I don't think that they know that.
It is a good first line of defense. I think if you're just getting started with estate planning or you don't maybe want to spend a lot of money on doing a trust, you should still have a will. It's still a great starting point. And some people, and I would also say too, sometimes your estate, meaning the assets you have, may not be that significant where you need to do a trust, and so if that's the case and you just have a simple will, that works. That is actually good for some people. I don't even recommend a trust for everyone, honestly. It really depends on what assets you have. But next up after the will is the trust. So a trust is a similar type of document. It is a live document, though, meaning it's a living trust because it becomes live or active the moment it's signed and we have to fund it. So it looks just like a will, but instead of it saying what happens when you die, you actually start putting assets in your trust immediately, right? So things that can go into a trust are homes, certain types of accounts. Well, we can talk about that too, because some accounts you don't want to put in a trust. But the largest assets are property, real property. So whether you have your main residence or a vacation home or, co-op or a condo or whatever assets you may have, both here in America, or if you have property in another country as well, we can talk about what that looks like. But a trust is really cool because what happens in a trust is that document or that trust now, it's almost like its own person. It
Mhm.
now essentially has title or ownership of the asset. And that's why trusts are a little bit more expensive because it's not just writing down, oh, this is going in the trust. No, we draft the trust, then we have to do what's called funding a trust. So if you own a home, for instance, let's take person A. Person A owns a home in New York. They have a vacation home in Florida. So, what we're going to do is if they want to do a trust, we then have to retitle that house in the name of the trust. So, instead of it being the house being owned by person A, we now change or transfer that ownership. We have to do a new deed. And that new house, the house is now going to be owned by the A family trust, right? And so, what makes it a complex process is let's say you have a mortgage on a home. When you have a mortgage on a home, that means that we also have to get the bank that owns that mortgage to approve this transfer. It's common, so banks are used to that, but you have to get their approval or else you can trigger a due on sale clause, which that's a lot of drama. But that's why you bring in a lawyer to help you out through all this process. The benefits of a trust are incredible, and there are two types of trusts. We have revocable and irrevocable trust. And they mean exactly what they say. A revocable trust is a trust similar to a will that you can change. You are still in control. You, as the grantor, you, Professor Jamila, would be the grantor, and you are considered the first or the initial trustee, right? And that means you're still in control of the trust, what happens to it. So, what that also means is that the asset is still technically in your possession because of you being the trustee. Now, revocable trusts are great for a couple reasons. Number one, they avoid probate court. That's a big deal, like we talked about. Who wants to be in court for 2 to 3, 4 years? Trust is a private document also. So if privacy is important to you, remember I said the will has to go and become a public record. Trusts do not become public records for the most part. Sometimes if there's an issue, but for the most part, they are private. So that's just between the grantor and the trustee and those who may become beneficiaries. You can also put in a trust like what happens if you become incapacitated. And the biggest thing for revocable trust is that they're flexible and that you maintain control. The downside to a revocable trust is that because you still retain control of those assets, you lose out on some of the benefits that an irrevocable trust has. So, if you want to maintain control, because some folks were like, I'm okay with not having all of the protection, I still want to retain control of my assets and still do all of that. Now you have what's called an irrevocable trust. Now this is now our third layer of protection and assets and planning for your estate. Irrevocable trusts are what they say. You really can't change them. And you're truly now giving up your control of your asset, but you're getting a lot of benefits. The biggest benefit is asset protection from creditors or debtors, right? So God forbid, especially for my business owners, let's say your business gets sued or something like that. Now creditors or your lawsuit is now coming after your assets. If your assets are in an irrevocable trust and you, the person, gets sued, they can't touch those assets essentially because now this irrevocable trust owns them and you don't have control over that. The other really big benefit is in terms of estate tax reduction because it's now being removed from your sort of control, it's no longer considered a part of your estate. So, depending on how large your estate is, if we hit the threshold, the federal threshold or a state threshold, you avoid that estate tax. And then the other benefit, and this is now on the healthcare side, my favorite part, is healthcare planning. So Medicaid planning, right? And for Medicaid, for older folks, it's called what we call a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. And essentially what that is an irrevocable trust that because your assets are no longer in your control, it allows you to be eligible for Medicaid coverage of nursing home care and potentially in-home care. Now, that is important because if someone ever needed nursing home care, for instance, right, or rehab or an in-home aid, the U.S. believes if you got a lot of assets, you better sell that. Like you can't, in their mind, you have to sell your home if you're going to move into a nursing home. That's really messed up for the average American because most folks, they just have their one home. So in order to allow them to keep their home in the family and still be able to be eligible for these healthcare benefits, you put it in an irrevocable trust. Now, what that also means is you have to find somebody that you really trust to be your trustee because they now have full control over your asset. But there are certain protections we can put in to make sure that, that if they ever did something wrong, we can remove them. But that's pretty much the general options.
Mm-hmm. Or if they predecease you, then you
Mm-hmm.
have someone else.
Yep. So what we do is we try to, when we're taking all this information, we get a main trustee, a successor trustee, a successor trustee. We really want to go through and make sure we have folks that we can call on if necessary.
I think that's really important for people in the 50 plus age group because if a spouse would like to have his or her husband or wife be the trustee,
Mm-hmm.
you're in a similar age group. You know,
Yeah.
both may transition around the same
Yeah.
time. So, and that's what people usually do. They have their spouses as beneficiaries, and then when if they both transition and they don't have a third person in mind, then that can be an issue. So
Correct.
you're bringing up some very important points, Shannon, that I think that are very, very, very critical. So let me give you ask some questions. If a
Sure.
person were a business owner like myself, and someone is attempting to sue, that the person can, with an irrevocable trust, the person would not be able to sue my business, correct? But the person could still sue
Well,
me
yeah.
as an individual.
It depends on my lawyer answer is it depends. So, and I'll preface this all by saying this is not legal advice. This is a conversation we are having, which
Oh, yes, a
yes,
conversation.
yes, 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 yes.
But legal advice, you have to call
Correct.
attorney Cohall to get
Yes,
this.
you do.
This is all hypothetical, okay?
Yes, these are just
Okay. This is a
potential options.
disclaimer. It's hypothetical. Okay.
But yeah, that's really the point of the irrevocable trust. It is protecting your assets. Some folks will protect their assets through an LLC. Trust, I kind of prefer trust sometimes, depending on what the asset is. Now, for business owners, this is also important because as folks' businesses grow, that business is an asset in and of itself. And there are a couple parts of a business that are your assets. The actual business, the name of the business, because if it's a new name, you want to make sure you protect that through trademark, whatever, intellectual property side. The actual potential systems or how you set up your business, that's your intellectual property as well. All of these things are assets that you want to protect. So when someone is first creating a business, they want to make sure too that they're, whether if it's an LLC and that they have an operating agreement, or if it's a corporation and they have bylaws, you want to make sure in those original formation documents you have written down what happens to the business if something happens to you, the business owner.
Mhm.
And that has to align with your estate plan. Why that's important is, let's say you start a business with a partner. So you have a partnership, right? You all need to have a partnership agreement that says either you guys have to decide, and that's why you talk to an attorney to help guide you through. Are we going to have a business where if something happens to one partner, the other partner automatically gets the shares of that person? They can buy out that shares, or can a person pass on their shares to their descendants? That's a decision you have to make in a business when you are working with someone else, or if you have investors or what. So there are a lot of questions out there. And it all depends on what business situation. Now, when it comes to getting sued, you want to protect yourself and never pierce what we call the corporate veil. We want to keep you, the individual, and your business separate. Especially for my small business owners, sometimes you think, oh, we're one and the same. My business and me are one and the same. No, keep it separate. And even if you have things written down, it's also important to show that you're doing the work to keep those two worlds separate. So, separate bank accounts, like you don't want to commingle funds. If you have an LLC, maybe you're taking an owner share to pay yourself, but make sure you can show that that's what's happening. You're not using your business card to, pay for things at home, unless they're being used for your business. But you really want to keep those walls, keep those areas of your life separate. It'll make it easier on our end when it comes to what happens with your assets upon death. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something really to think about. So no one can sue anything that's in a trust, whereas with a will, people can sue.
I would say it depends. I can't definitively say no, 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 but for the most part, that is the point of the irrevocable trust, that it protects your assets from lawsuits and creditors. So
Hmm. Hmm. So with the
because
revocable,
you're essentially, remember what we're saying is you've relinquished your ownership. So that asset is no longer yours. It belongs to the trust. And that trust is managed by a trustee that is not you. So
hmm, but with a revocable trust,
you still own it because you're the trustee.
and so you can be sued and your business can be sued.
Potentially, and they can reach
The revocable
those assets.
trust.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's pluses and minuses to each of these types. It also depends on how old you are when you decide to do certain things. If you're looking to do an irrevocable trust, maybe because you want to be eligible for Medicaid coverage for nursing home care, I don't necessarily always say that that's not something that I want that younger folks really should be doing, But once you hit about 65 to 70, between that age range, you want to start thinking about irrevocable trust for Medicaid planning. The reason being, if you ever needed in-home care or nursing home care, we have what's called the 5-year look back period. So Medicaid is going to see, were there any major transactions? Did you just sell your house just so you could get into the nursing home next week? They want to make sure that no transactions happen within the last 5 years. So the moment you set up an irrevocable trust, let's say you set it up at 70 years old.
Mhm.
Technically, your clock starts, that 5-year clock starts. And upon turning 75, you're now eligible pertaining to all the other requirements. But in terms of your assets, that will allow you to become eligible for that Medicaid nursing home care coverage.
Yeah, because I've heard of situations where people had to sell their homes if they
Yeah.
desired to have Medicare
Yeah.
coverage, which was really unfortunate. Or some people started to transfer the homes to their children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Don't
so
recommend.
now the government has gotten wise and has a 5-year gap because
Yeah.
if you do it within a year, then you want to go into a nursing home. They're like, no,
Yeah.
that's not going to work. Hmm.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, let's say you do it and it's 3 years and then so that whatever your requirement is, it kind of goes down with each of those years. Now, Professor Jamila, you just said something about putting assets in your children's name. Don't recommend it at all. Don't do it. Put it in a trust and have your kids as the beneficiary because I am a younger person. I'm 34, but even for my own parents, I wouldn't tell them to put their property in my name. They have a trust, and myself and maybe my brother are the beneficiaries. But when you put an asset in the name of your child, you trigger some things. Number one, when you're younger, you're a little bit riskier in terms of business endeavors and life. And so you don't want to have someone, your child now, who may get into some trouble or maybe a lawsuit or maybe they get into a car accident or have to pay somebody in debt. We got student loans. Like there's a lot of debt for younger generations. So by attaching that house to a younger person, you're now kind of tying them in and you don't want anything, God forbid, to happen where they now owe someone or some entity and now your house is gone. So put it in a
Yeah.
trust, name your kids as the beneficiaries.
Mhm. That's an excellent point. So if a person has a will and has children as beneficiaries, that could be an issue because nothing is protected with a will.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And the other thing I keep going back to, they got to go to probate court.
Yeah.
There is no one contesting it. That's something I never knew. I never
Yeah.
knew. I just
And it
saw
can get
people.
nasty with people and their families.
Yeah,
Professor Jamila, you see families you never think. You'd be like, I thought y'all were siblings. I thought everything was cool. Oh no. I have seen some things and it's really heartbreaking because
yeah,
families get torn apart over stuff and it's just like if I just wish that person would have just handled it better to protect for the future.
yeah, yeah. And I know of someone who has said, well, I don't think this person has assets uh,
Hmm.
to speak of. But anyway, the person's philosophy is, well, whatever's left, they just have to deal with it. And I think that's really cruel and irresponsible
It's a
because I know
little
a
selfish.
family member who did that.
Yeah.
He didn't handle his business. And
Yeah.
when he transitioned, people started bickering over stuff. Whereas with my mom didn't have an official will, but she laid things out very clearly.
Made it easy.
So it's really important, everyone,
Yeah.
to start handling your business. And I know most of you out there probably have, but there's some who have not.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important for for Shannon, Attorney Cohall, to go over these things to explain to us the differences between the will, the
Yeah.
revocable trust, and an irrevocable trust. And so we can start doing some estate planning,
Yeah.
especially because you just never know. I know people who are even younger who've had strokes. You don't know if you will become incapacitated. You just don't know. You don't
Yeah.
know. And I heard of a case about 2 years ago where this couple was very much in love, and an older couple, mature couple, and the husband was very fit and everything, and slim and whatever. And the wife was inside the house, and she had a knock on the door, and the neighbor said her husband was outstretched on the lawn. He was vegetarian, you know, athletic, and all of that. He just died. He
Mm.
died. I'm not sure about their financial uh, life and picture or any of that, but that wasn't expected. You can
Yeah.
kind of anticipate if someone has a lingering illness, but this person
Yeah.
did not, and he was a picture
Yeah.
of health. So you never know.
You never know. You never know. And we can't, obviously, we don't know what tomorrow holds. We don't even know what the next minute or hour holds. But,
Surely don't. We
I,
surely don't.
the best we can do is prepare as best as we can. This is nothing is foolproof, but it's just something for us to take a little bit of the stressor off of us, especially
Yeah,
if you care about folks afterwards. And a part of estate planning is also not just planning for death, but you mentioned about incapacity. You have to plan for life too. There are
yeah,
other documents that go into an estate plan, like your healthcare proxy or your living will or what we call an advance directive or your
yeah,
power of attorney. Those documents help to determine who makes decisions for you if you can't.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And you don't just assume that it's the next person because I've had married couples who are like they're married but they're separated. But if you don't have, let's say somebody gets sick, right? And you haven't been talking to your husband or your wife for a minute, that person technically has the right to make decisions if you don't have something. So if you want it to be maybe your sibling or maybe a friend, you better write it down.
Yes, yes. I know of a situation, I know of several situations where people are just in la la land. They're in la la land. You know, one person I know is still in a marriage, and uh, legally and emotionally, they've been emotionally divorced for over 10 years, and the person just won't get a divorce for whatever reason. And I'm just, like I said earlier, I've stopped talking to the person because I had advised the person, you need to handle this.
Yeah.
And I know of a situation where someone has an elderly parent who is now, I think, suffering from the onset of dementia. And the
Mm.
person hasn't um, addressed that, right? And the parent is still married to someone who is estranged. So, and that's very interesting because people don't understand that all the assets will go to that estranged spouse, even though you're taking care of the parent, or even
Yeah.
though you're taking care the your spouse.
Yeah.
Someone else is in the picture is going to go to them. And for those people who are caretaking men or women in these situationships, and you're not married, and you're not married, that's not wise
It's
because
not. You
that
have to
the wife or the husband that's legally still married to you will get all of the assets, even though you've been
yeah.
caretaking this person for 10 to 15 years. Situationships to me have no place. You better handle your business
Yeah.
because the state will step in. The state will step in.
And that reminds me of Barry White. When Barry White passed, I think it was like early 2000s, similar situation. He had an estranged wife, and then that never fully divorced, and he never up. But and this is the thing too about when it comes to wills and trusts, you got to update them because you can have one, but if you don't like, let's say you make one when you're 40. If you die in your 90s or 80s or whatever, or at 100, and you haven't updated it, and somebody is listed on there that shouldn't be getting something, but you never updated, and so that's Barry White. He had his long-term girlfriend and his children. that were never written into his will, but everything was left to his estranged wife. So it was a huge legal battle for years and years. And so you just don't want to be in that position. It is
Yeah.
not fun. So, and I had a client come to me and the person said, how do I disinherit my spouse? I said, you get a divorce because that like marriage, and this goes back to even the thoughts on marriage, marriage is beautiful. Love is beautiful. I love relationships. I think it's a wonderful thing. And marriages make families stronger. They make communities stronger. It's great, but they're
Yeah.
also beneficial or restrictive, depending on how you view it in terms of the legality of it. It's a contract between two people, honestly, a marriage agreement. It's a contract that says we are now joined as one in the eyes of the law. And what that means is that person, and so if you want to fully separate yourself from that person financially, legally, in terms of estate plan, you have to get a divorce if you don't want that, if that is the goal. You can't just be like you said, can't be separated for 30 years and like, oh, that's not, yes, it is still your wife. By law, it is still your wife. So you want to do the work to make sure it's a clean split.
Yeah.
And I'm not here, and the thing about what I've learned and what I love about being a lawyer is people sometimes they're like, they get nervous about telling me something. I said, let me tell you up front, I'm not here to judge. I
Right.
don't care what your situation. I've seen and heard it all. It doesn't matter. My job is to make you have the best outcome for you. So whatever, like folks be like, I have another child. Okay, let me know. This is why lawyers always tell you, tell me everything. Don't lie to me. Don't try to hide it because it makes it harder on us when we're creating a plan. And that's also why we have attorney-client privilege. So,
Mhm.
for instance, if I have a client that has someone that they want to inherit, but they don't necessarily want others to know about that, and that's in their will. That's their prerogative to have that in there, and that's their private document. And so that is why that's the benefit of working with an attorney, an estate planning attorney, to do this. And it doesn't have to be me; it could be anybody. It's just working with somebody that you trust. And that's also particularly why I got into this area of the law because I saw my community. I'm born and raised in Brooklyn, predominantly Black community, lots of Caribbean folk. And so I saw that we were lacking in this area in terms of resources and knowledge. And my parents didn't just send me to school, to all these schools, to just get it and leave the community. No, I was told you get this and you bring it back home. You empower others. And so that's what I try to do with my law practice.
You've done an excellent job. I'm your client. Signing the dotted line in the future. I'm your client, and I recommended my god sister to you, who's very happy. So, and all
Thank
of SEBA, Cornell Black Alumni Association, I'm posting this before it airs. Okay, so we don't need to hear any buts. Okay, Shannon is our estate planning lawyer. You got me? You got me, SEBA? Okay, okay. I can say that. It's my podcast. Okay.
Oh Lord, Professor Jamila, you are too much.
I can say it. I can say it. But before we leave, I need you to give us your contact information, how people can get in touch with you, and all of that.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for this conversation, and I can't wait to continue the conversation with folks. But folks can reach me online. My website is Cohall Firm, COHALLFIRM.com, cohallfirm.com. You can email me at shannon@cohallfirm.com. You can
Spell it
call.
out. Spell it out for my
Let me
viewers.
spell it out. So if you want to email me, it is SHANNON at COHALLFIRM.com. So Shannon@cohallfirm.com. Give me a call, 201-357-1777. And if you're on social media, I am at Attorney Cohall on Instagram and Facebook. And if you can't find me, ask Professor Jamila and she will give you my contact info.
Surely will. I
But
surely
thank
will.
you so much for having me. This was wonderful. I'm so
Oh,
excited about this.
oh, this is amazing. When we were talking informally, and one of our alum friends Sandy Black told me, I said, I'm looking for an estate planner, someone who deals with trusts and wills. She said, I'm the perfect person, Shannon. I said, oh no, really? Amazing. Shannon, you feel the energy from her, right? The integrity, the compassion, the legal expertise. I mean, she is extremely, extremely ethical and with you. She knows all of this. And that's what I love about her. You can trust her. She's become a part of my little family. So she'll become a part of your family because when you're dealing with something as intimate as wills and trusts and whatever, you need to be able to trust the people. You need
Yeah.
to know that they're not making side deals with other folk behind your
Yeah.
back because sometimes they can and you
Yeah.
don't know anything about it. So you
Yeah.
really need to make sure that there is some kind of uh, resonance with them and that you connect. And you
Yeah.
can see with the energy from Shannon that
Mhm.
she's 100% awesome.
Yeah.
And all of you know, because they know I'm very direct, that I would not recommend someone and have someone be my attorney if I didn't trust the person.
Of
Okay.
course.
Yeah, she's amazing. So call her, call her. And when you call her, make sure that you refer other people to her as well.
Please.
And so we can just continue to grow the community and have all of our assets protected.
Yeah.
And so we can, go to sleep at night
Yeah,
knowing,
and enjoy life because it's already done. That's the bet. That's the plan. Write
yeah,
it, leave it in, we good to go.
yes, and have everyone know what the plan is. And don't be messy like some folk we know. I don't care what happens after I go because it's on them. No, if someone did that to you, you would be very upset. That is messy. We are not messy. Great lives on the rise, people, right? We are not
That's
messy.
right.
So make sure that you handle your assets, handle your business, and so we can all have a wonderful, wonderful, peaceful life. So, yeah, I love you, Shannon. Thank you so
Love you
very
too.
much. And everyone else, remember, like, click, and subscribe. Great Lives on the Rise. We have our show every Sunday from 7 to 8 p.m. And if you miss it, you can always get the replay. We get the replay on Spotify audio, Spotify video, Facebook, LinkedIn, and our own channel, Great Lives on the Rise. Okay? So thank you, beloveds. Know that I love you and know that I have the utmost respect for you. That's the reason why I brought Shannon to you. So you are not going to be stressed, okay, about your estate. Because a lot of us have, we have some assets. So I don't desire for you to be stressed about it. Okay? All right, beloveds, until the next time, be safe and know that I love you. Take care. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Gray Lives on the Rise, being brought to you by Jamila Sense, which is the product line of Oyende Enterprises. Jamila Sense is a 100% natural aromatherapy line that heals the mind, body, and soul. This episode of Gray Lives on the Rise was intended to uplift you, to inspire you, and to motivate you. Please tell all of your friends, family members, and anyone you know who's 50 plus, who's living a vibrant life and interested in doing more and enjoying life even to its fullest. So thank you, and please subscribe, like, and comment on this video and all our videos. Thank you, and until next time, until our next podcast, namaste and be well.